Hi, Boomer Time family. How are you today? It's good to see you as always here. And today we are talking about a hugely important topic, caregiving. I've said this before, and it's hard to really comprehend just how many Americans are today in some kind of caregiving role when it comes to their older parents. The numbers really actually are kind of shocking, and they're only expected to grow over the next decade. So, what are those numbers? 1 in 5 Americans are currently involved in some role of unpaid caregiving. Maybe that's full time, maybe it's part time, or maybe it's on top of all the other things they have in their life. And it's also unpaid. So that equals 53 million people. And as I said, there's no sign of that trend ending anytime soon. This is important stuff to pay attention to because the federal government now anticipates that more than a half of people over age 65 will require some form of long-term care at some point in their lives. This is part of the silver tsunami that I've talked about on the show. It's a giant wave that's building and coming our way. I want you to know how to be better prepared and equipped for all those challenges that come with aging. And you know what? Caring for a parent or a loved one is part of that. I've been through it even this week. I'm an unpaid caregiver on top of what I do for my mother. And she suffered a stroke this week. So she's in the hospital. It involved an ER trip, a lot of hours, and now she's in the hospital. I know what this is like, okay? I know how hard it is. And I've got the right things on my side, so it makes it, I don't want to use the word easier, but the tools are there that I need when I need them. So that's what I want for you. The silver tsunami, you know what a tsunami is, right? It's a giant wave that comes ashore and wipes out everything in its path. So that's the term that's been given to the graying of America. We baby boomers are getting older, and in the coming years, more than half of the country's population will be over 65. That is going to change things around here. And it's also going to make it more complicated to get certain kinds of care. This means, like I said before, we need to be better prepared. And also better prepared for the work that's ahead. Not only to meet the challenge, both in mind and emotional, but also physical, as well as the time and sometimes the financial commitment that may be there, Not to mention the balancing of other parts of your life. That's what I want to talk about today on Boomer Time, okay? More specifically, we're going to talk about the steps you need to consider before saying yes to the responsibility of caregiving. And even if you've already said yes, it's okay. You're in a role now, and there are still some important takeaways here. You can always make your plan better, right? At least I think so. And maybe bring better support to you as a caregiver and to your loved one that's receiving that care. This is the kind of stuff we're going to tackle in my strategy sessions. If you call me for one of those, we're going to get deep into your circumstances. We're going to sort through them. We're going to come up with a plan that will better equip you for the challenges ahead. You don't have to have it all together. That's what I'm here for, okay? And I love doing this kind of work. That's what Boomer Time is all about, too. So, what do you need before you say yes? Well, we'll get to that when I come back. Welcome back to Boomer Time. Nancy Cogar here, and I am so glad you're here. Today we are talking about caregiving. As I've already mentioned, there are millions, 53 million people out there who are in some kind of unpaid caregiving role today. That's just America, okay? This is important stuff, and it will affect not only you, but the people you're caring for, okay? And, a lot of times your health, your mind, your spirit, and you need to be prepared for it. Okay, this is not easy stuff. So that's what today's about. I want to give you some ideas and some to-dos that will help you be prepared for this very important job. Okay? So what do you have to do before you say yes to a caregiving role? Well, first, you need to fully understand the person's needs. Okay? Like I said, this is tough stuff. So no matter who it is, if it's a parent, a friend, a spouse, you need to fully understand that person's needs, both in the short term and the long term. This is a long run game, okay? You're making a serious commitment, and you need to know what's ahead. This should include a comprehensive evaluation of all kinds of needs. I'm talking from the type of insurance they have, whether it's regular private health care. Do they have long-term care coverage? Do they have Medicare? Do they have supplemental insurance? Do they have prescription insurance? Do they have any insurance at all? Do they have Medicaid? Are they eligible for Medicaid if you need it? These are all important questions, and Medicare just on its own is multi-level and offers all kinds of different levels of care. It's not as simple as you would think. So there's a reason they call it the ABC's alphabet insurance, because there are all kinds of beyond ABCs that you can choose for your Medicare coverage, rather. So this is all important. You need to know what those numbers are, what the coverage is, how you use it. You need to know what kind of supplements this person takes, their mobility analysis. Can they walk? Do they need supports? What are their medical conditions? Who are the doctors that they see? And what are they seeing those doctors for? I remember early on, my mother had, 5, 6 doctors. And she talked about them all kind of in the same conversation. But I realized I really didn't know what one was doing versus the other. And that is something we really need to spend some time on. How often do they see this person? Why do they see this person? And for what condition? There are also very stringent privacy laws these days with HIPAA requirements. So you're going to want to make sure you have a release that allows you to talk about any of those medical conditions with those healthcare workers. It's not as easy as it used to be. You need that in place. You also need to know what kind of medications they're on. This is common sense stuff, but sometimes it gets missed, especially when you think this has already been tackled. Okay, where is the pharmacy? You get the idea, right? Of course, you absolutely need to make sure you've got the right legal documents in place. These documents need to be able to allow you to do the things that you are going to face as a caregiver. If you don't have these, get them right away. Just because someone has been diagnosed with a cognitive disorder does not necessarily mean that they lack the capacity to sign estate planning documents. That may surprise you. But that is something that needs to be done the right way and sooner rather than later most times. I deal with this all the time, okay? We are going to want to see that those documents, as well as any kind of potential issue, in the future as far as cognitive ability, are addressed when those documents are made. Don't wait. Don't ignore it, okay? Please, I've said it before, but please do not make generic or internet versions of these documents. Please don't do that. May seem easy now, but you're probably creating a problem later on. This state is a statutory formality state. Well, that sounds very legal, doesn't it? Well, it's important because it means if the documents don't meet the state requirements, they may not be enforceable. And that's the last thing you want, people, right? You are going to want to make sure that these documents are enforceable, specific, and authorize you to do the job that lies ahead. Remember, and I've seen this, you don't want to be told in the future that you can't do something you need to do. I've seen it. Here's another biggie that often is overlooked. You need to sit down and develop a specific care plan for both the initial care, and the care that may be necessary in the future. This is part of what I do with my estate planning as well. Sometimes it involves, a caregiver, which makes sense, right? Sometimes it involves the physician. A lot of times it involves the financial advisor because all these things cost money. All right, what do your parents need now? What may they need later down the road? What will these needs look like? Will you need more help? Will there be more money available to pay for those services? Do you have access to that money? Are you going to have to pay, or are you going to have to promise to pay for that care as a guarantor? If not, can they qualify for assistance? What is that assistance, right? These are complex questions, folks, and you want to do this the right way. I work with folks on long-term care plans all the time, and those can and should be incorporated into your estate plan, period. Well, that leads me to my next point. So you are going to want to complete a financial assessment, okay? What resources are there to work with to provide that necessary support and care? If there aren't, what other strategies are there? As I mentioned previously, you want to look at whether your parents can qualify for assistance. In this state, it's called TennCare. Essentially, it's Medicaid assistance, right? What are the strings attached to any such assistance? The VA or the Veterans Administration may have some things. What do you need? What do you need to know about that now so you don't inadvertently cause an eligibility issue down the road? I've seen that too. And once you get down that road, it's harder to fix. Okay? These are critical questions because the things you do now to answer these questions may come back to bite you if you don't look at this issue. Another thing that's often overlooked is a self-assessment, okay? And by that, I mean, look at your own emotional, mental, and physical stamina. We all have our limits, right? Are you going to be able to handle the tasks ahead? You need to look at that question. It's not easy stuff. How will you handle the increased demands of caregiving, especially given your current and ongoing work, maybe your schedule, family needs, and your own personal health? Okay, because caregiver burnout is real. I've even had to look at these issues, okay? And I've got help in place. My husband is my partner in caring for my mother. I would be a lot more stressed out if I didn't have him. But we work as a team, okay? And that is so important. We need to look at who's doing what, who's able to do what, when, and how do you get her to her doctor's appointments? How do you check on her? How do you make sure she has everything she needs, right? While you've got everything else to do. I'm running a law practice. I'm a little busy. But it works. So I'm hoping that this will help you in developing those plans that are just really critical when it comes to caregiving. And what do you do? And this is not unusual either, but what do you do if you need help with that caregiving? If it's going to be in-home care, what is that going to entail? Who's going to do what? That's what I was just talking about, right? How much is that going to cost? You live in an old house? Are there renovations that need to be made to the living space if mom or loved one is moving into the house? Likely that's something you're going to have to look at, okay? And that involves money too, of course. There's some help that we can go through that may help you with that. But see, that's what going to a specialist or someone that deals with these things all the time helps with, right? Are there other family members, friends, or community organizations that can offer support and help? Here's a thought. Have that information available now. All right? Review it. Know what it is. Know what they provide. Know what you need to do to get it. And put it somewhere where you can find it in a book. Not a book, but you know what I mean, a folder. Create a folder for your caregiving, spiral folder, something like that. Okay? All right. Well, now I'm going to take a little break and I'll be right back. Well, before the break, I was talking about having those resources available up front and doing some research and some homework to make sure you know what they do, when, how you become eligible, who you contact, what you need to be available to get the help in place. There's several different companies that can do these things, and you may not be a good fit for one. Know now, okay? And some of them require a waiting list. I mentioned the silver tsunami. That's only going to get worse. There's just more and more people needing these kinds of services. So if there's a waiting list for that kind of assistance, those waiting lists can be lengthy, okay? Even several years I've seen at times. So you need to think ahead. I would recommend that you develop what could be a professional style caregiving agreement plan, okay? I do those all the time. Identify your role as a caregiver up front. I'll help you do that. That should include also what you can't do, because chances are you are not a physician, you're probably not a nurse, and you're probably not a healthcare worker, right? Maybe there's some of you out there, but if you are in that position, you understand what I'm saying. So there are things you can't do, but there are millions of Americans, as I mentioned, 53 million Americans in some kind of role as an unpaid caregiver. There are starting to be some resources available to recognize the value of those services, both in providing the care, the care itself, and then keeping your loved one out of institutionalized care. That has value, okay? Look at this before you start to provide care. There can be strategies, and I've worked through them many, many times, that allow the caregiver to be compensated. All right? Maybe it's not a salary, but we work through an agreement that leads to maybe the house becoming theirs later in life or something like that once the parents pass away. You can't do this retroactively, unfortunately, but you can do it on the front end. So I recommend that it be part of the estate plan. And as I said, it might allow for the transition of certain assets in exchange for the caregiving, which hopefully would happen without a possible legal issue related to the transfer of those assets, because I've seen that before too when people don't plan the right way. I think you can see a specific theme here running through all these issues, but it's important to mention that you need professional guidance. You don't know what you don't know, okay? So book a strategy session with me. That would be the start of a process. These issues are complex. And an elder law attorney is more than worthwhile for your investment. And believe me, you'll be glad you made it. Maybe you also need to look at geriatric care manager. Look at options for that, for supported care, assisted living, independent living, nursing home care, memory care. There are all kinds of different care. I've done episodes on that before, and it can be confusing. Find out how much, and again, whether there are any waiting lists for the rooms. You may be surprised. You may not like some of them. They're all different. Go have lunch there. Ask them, if you can have lunch. They're going to say yes. And then ask them some questions. I want to have an upcoming podcast on the kinds of questions to ask during one of those visits. I think that's critical. So, we got to work on that one. That would be important, because sometimes you don't know what to ask, and then you make a bad choice because you didn't know something that you didn't know. So understanding what to expect for the options as to the end of life care, end of life, is also critical, especially because I know this is near and dear to my heart, because you want to preserve the honor, the dignity, and the quality of life of your loved one, right? You're going to want to talk about end of life, as well as the directives that need to be made. Maybe there are other benefits, again, through the VA. I always ask for a copy of someone's DD-214 if they served in the military, and I keep that on file. It's better to have it now than wonder where it is later. That's a hard thing to find on the back end. I hope this has been helpful to you today. These are, I know I covered a lot of ground, but these are complex. So don't think, I can't do all that. Yes, you can. You can. You just need help. All right? And that's what I'm here for. And I know how you can get other help. So we're going to work together on this. This is a community here on Boomer Time, right? And it can be so isolating, both for the one that is receiving the care and for the caregiver. So don't do that to yourself. Remember, you're just one person, and you can get help if you need it. So I'm offering that legal help, the planning help. I'm around this all the time, so I've got resources. I want to share those resources with you. I got lots of resources on my website. You want to check that out? It's nancycogar.com. Just like this, Nancy Cogar, nancycogar.com. Check out the website. You can also reach out to me there on the website. Let me know what you think of the podcast, right? I would love to know. If you've got a question, ask it. It may become, part of a future episode. I do that sometimes on questions people ask. They're good questions. Be encouraged today, okay? This is a immense job, and you're not alone, but we're going to do it together the right way by giving you help and resources. I've enjoyed our discussion today, and I hope you have a good week. I'll see you next time.